My name is Selena Rivera. Today we're going to be talking about my research project. The noise you hear in the background is the PC, and this is the only time you're going to be able to see my face because I'm going to be presenting as if we're in person, which means I'm going to be presenting on a separate computer screen. Without further ado, let's dive into this topic. Oops, sorry. So today we're going to be talking about police brutality. Obviously, it's been a huge topic in 2020 because of the past events. Why I chose this topic is because I'm in a sorority called Delta Zeta here at UNCW, and we just recently established a diversity and inclusion committee, which I'm a part of. So when researching topics that I wanted to do for this project and report, I wanted to do something that was not only beneficial to this course, but beneficial to my knowledge and my understanding in order to help my sorority grow in that area as well. So I did have an introduction video, but it is very long and I do not have time. I keep getting cut off, so it just was about to explain what I was going to be talking about in this. So where did this all begin? So we can date police brutality back to times of slavery when they had slave catchers and slave patrol. Slave patrol was basically a patrol that would go and make sure that the slaves were doing their job and that they weren't trying to escape. Basically, the slave patrol had the authority to demand to search the slaves' objects and possessions without probable cause of anything. So we can relate that back to today, because African Americans do get pulled over more without probable cause, and they are basically forced to allow police officers to search their belongings even though they haven't given consent, because and this is a huge problem in itself, because this could ultimately lead to having more tension and stress between the police officer and the individual in the car, and that could highly impact how police come across and if they use force without probable cause as well. So everything that I just said was what this girl was going to talk about. I was going to show this video as well, but it is a little long. So police brutality today, if you guys don't know who this is George Floyd. He's the reason we had a bunch of protests all across the nation at the beginning of this year. His death was, it was a huge problem because of the way he died. He died by police brutality. I will show in the next slide. This is him, and this is an officer kneeling on his neck for no reason. He was saying he couldn't breathe, and the officer continued to do it. So that was a huge act of police brutality, and that it was just a huge thing in the nation. So his death is the reason we had all these peaceful protests. So this is a peaceful protest in Buffalo, New York, that ended with a man getting pushed down by one of these officers, and if you can see, and when his head hits the floor, he immediately begins bleeding from the ear. And this officer wanted to help him, but this officer said, no, keep moving, which is just an act of cruelty, honestly. He did receive help, but, it's just, what are they training these men to do and stuff like that? So it's just I don't know, it's too much. The video makes me tear up every time. Speaking of tearing up, this picture right here is of a peaceful protest, and these peaceful protesters are getting tear gassed for just simply allowing themselves to partake in their constitutional rights as to a peaceful protest, and these officers are tear gassing them and threatening them with weapons, which is a huge abuse of authority and abuse of power on their part. So these videos this first one was the one in Buffalo, New York. I literally cannot watch it or I will start to cry. But in the second one's peaceful protesters outside of Washington, D.C. outside the White House, getting tear gassed for peaceful protesting as well. So I will put this one.
Another question being asked.
Here we go. Sorry about that. 31 to...
Antoa, a 27-year veteran of law enforcement, condemning how officers handled this arrest.
With that particular situation or that type of technique, there is really no need whatsoever for you to be on that person's neck.
And there have been lives lost here in Cleveland.
What do we want? Justice!
Tamir Rice.
I'm with my mother every day.
Tanisha Anderson. Those 137 shots. To many, these deaths symbolize racism and indifference.
There's a race problem in America today. The people that are suffering in this contest between the power of the police and the power of the citizens are the black folks.
And experts say much of what is happening is the result of inadequate police training.
If you want to operate well, you have good policies, you have good procedures, you have good training, and you enforce your policies.
To become a barber in Ohio, you must complete 1,800 hours of training. To become a police officer in Ohio, you must complete 600 hours of training. The disparity strikes some as ineffective.
We have a heightened level of scrutiny from the community. We have a heightened level of scrutiny from the government.
In recent years, police have been under intense scrutiny, especially in their use of force and restraints.
There's all sorts of methods that can be used to avoid the types of situations, not the one that we just saw, because again, I don't think you need training for that one, but for the most part, that can avoid so many of these situations that we're facing.
And beyond training, departments must foster a culture to ensure that these policies are followed.
It's all about the enforcement. If there's no penalty for breaching the rule, then the rule doesn't matter. And it never did.
Deadly encounters like we saw in Minneapolis.
So that I thought was really interesting about the whole how much training a barber needs versus how much training a police officer needs in Ohio. That was cut in half, and it's insane because we do need to be focusing on training our police officers, which is why as the man talked about in the video, we need to be training these officers more correctly. When I was researching, I read that a lot of reporters that would look deeper into this topic, the people they were interviewing wouldn't talk about their training because they didn't really know what to say about it. Like, it's hard for people to be able to control themselves when they aren't given ulterior options. You know what I mean? They have to be able to think about their training and relate it to the current situation they're in. That's something that we need to definitely look more into. Sorry. That's my presentation. So sorry I talked so much. I really wanted to keep it in the time frame that we were told to. I really could have talked about it so much more, but I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. As you can see, police brutality, horrible issue, and more needs to be done to stop it. So